good, do you think?
Welcome, everybody, to our session. I am Ashley. I'm from the Canadian Professional Sales Association, and I'm a member of the Accommodations Committee. And we appreciate you joining us this morning for our session around reducing friction in the RFP process, holding both buyers and suppliers accountable. So before we get started, we want to thank BWH Hotels for sponsoring the conference app. And if you have not downloaded the app yet, not sure what you're waiting for, but you still have another half of a day to utilize it. So there is a QR code on the screen now if you want to quickly take a snap of that. It's immensely helpful. So again, thank you to BWH Hotels for providing that for all of us. So this morning in our session, we are going to learn to understand what kind of data is needed to support reasoning and rationale for requests, how to build trust and transparency in our RFP process, how to build mutually agreeable pathways to meet our objectives, and how to shift our focus from short-term transactions to cultivating long-term partnerships. And we do that by prioritizing accountability. So we ran a LinkedIn poll prior to our session, and 100% of respondents agreed there is friction in the RFP process. And in fact, 70% felt that there is significant room for improvement. So clearly, a topic as witnessed by the poll and by this very full room. It's a hot topic. It's something that resonates with all of us. So we have an amazing moderator today, Chris Lewis. Chris is an accomplished corporate travel executive with over 28 years of experience helping customers bring to life best-in-class corporate travel programs. Chris is a high-energy, high-output leader who is passionate about the travel industry, an advocate for enabling business growth through the power and presence of personal connection. So I will now turn it over to Chris and to our panel to lead our discussion.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Wow, I am impressed. Firstly, by show of hands, who went to the big night out last night? Wow! Must be good coffee. You know, it was funny, someone made a comment this morning that there were a lot of buyers in the room today, and I figured it was because of either A, good coffee, or B, we're the closest to the buffet. So it just kind of made sense. Thank you, Ashley, for the introduction. Much appreciated. I'd like to also thank each and every one that joined today's session. I know you had other options this morning, and we're thankful that you guys chose ours. The committee has put in a tremendous amount of work in bringing to you an informative and interactive session today. We hope everyone's engaged. We're going to try and keep it high energy because we know it's the first one in the morning. We know you've had a long couple days, so we'll try and keep it as energetic as we can. And so really, before we get started, I'd like to kick off with introductions. So joining me today on the stage, we have Catherine Valancourt. Catherine is an accomplished procurement leader with a passion for driving efficiency and innovation within the supply chain. In her current role as Director of Indirect Procurement at Samuel Son & Co., Catherine focuses on optimizing procurement process across the organization. We also have Samantha Barrett-Wallace. Sam is with JourneyWise Consulting and currently working with Cooperators Insurance as travel manager. Sam is a 25-year corporate travel and MICE industry veteran and a subject matter expert. Sam has held operations and sales roles for both third-party corporate event planners and worked in procurement organizations in both the financial and insurance verticals. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you.
We also have Helen Thibault. I practiced the Thibault, emphasis on T.
I appreciate that.
As account director, global sales for IHG. Helen is focused on creating long-term global relationships. A trusted advisor for her accounts, Helen helps clients and hotels succeed through win-win RFP negotiations. So nice to have you with us and a relevant topic for you today. And last but not least, we have Monica Nowak as a multi-property sales manager with Best Western Hotel Group. Monica executes sales activities across several hotel properties, including revenue generation and maximizing occupancy rates across her portfolio of properties. Revenue generation and maximizing occupancy will be an interesting topic today, so stay tuned on that one. Welcome, Monica, to the panel. Okay, we ready to get started? Let's do it. Okay, everyone, perfect. I have to look all the way here for the slide. So the first topic we're going to discuss today is what is the status of current hotel RFP negotiations? And there was a recent GBTA RFP survey conducted in May of 2023 that included feedback on 2024 negotiations. And through that, they've identified a few points. You know, and I always, when I go through survey results, I try to add a little bit of flair for the dramatics or energy. So as I go through these, and to make them a little bit more exciting, I'm going to ask for some crowd participation. Are you guys up for that? All right, that was okay. We'll try and build on that. Okay, so I'm going to say, before I address every one of these points, I'm going to say, did you know? And I want you guys to follow me. Okay, ready? Did you know? Yeah. Did you know? All right, let's try this again. I know it's early, guys. Stay with me here, all right? Take a deep breath. Did you know that 77% of buyers say that the negotiation environment favors suppliers? Yeah. Interesting. You know, I wonder when I read that if we flipped that and we asked suppliers what they thought about that and whether that percentage rings true. 55% also reported difficulty in securing favorable hotel rates in the past year. You know, it's interesting. This is really supported by the fact that in 2023, Canada's hotel industry achieved record-breaking average daily rates and revenue per available room, so RevPAR. So it's interesting that even though buyers are having difficulty negotiating and getting lower rates, the revenue for the hotels are going up, occupancy rates are going down. So it's a trend that we're going to address in today's discussion. Did you know? We're getting there. Less than a quarter, or exactly 23% of buyers report that over the past year, it was easy to obtain favorable hotel rates. I'll repeat that, 23%. While only 18% say it was easy to secure favorable air discounts. A little bit of parity, or creating a little more parity there. And the truth is, guys, inflation is not going away, or at least not going away as quickly as I think we would all like. And while global inflation is set to fall in 2024, it will continue to impact hotel cost models, certainly as staffing, wage shortages in real estate take longer to recover than some others. Last one, did you know? Oh, that's much better. Despite this outlook, more than 4 in 5 travel managers, or 84%, say their company will conduct hotel RFPs within the next year, within 2024. So, you know, kind of what are the key learnings here from these 3 points? Firstly, hotels continue to be significantly impacted by inflation and macroeconomics, as I'm sure we all are to some extent, while travel buyers are feeling the pressure of reduced buying power and an unbalanced or unfamiliar negotiation process. So really an opportunity for the industry in large to step back and reevaluate your strategies, your go-to-market procurement plans, and really work together with your providers to come up with a holistic plan. And we're going to get into a little of that today. All right, panel, are you guys ready?
We are ready. Yes.
All right, so just to give you guys some context, the first question for the panel is, and I'd like to maybe take some time to explore our understanding of the role of smart data in supporting a fair and transparent hotel negotiations. So the question for the panel today is, in the context of the hotel program, and especially during the hotel RFP season, how can buyers and property or brand sales managers effectively align on what is the relevant data needed to strengthen the negotiation process? So my first question is going to be both for Sam and Catherine. Sam, I'll maybe let you answer it first, and then Catherine will give you a chance. So my question is, when preparing a hotel RFP, what are your primary data sources today? Where does that data come from? And are you currently using that data to understand traveler spend habits, or to use that data to develop your negotiation strategy? So Sam, do you want to take that?
I do. Data is everything. It really does give us the strategy, right? You cannot start your hotel RFP without looking at your data. So I'm always diving into it, even before RFP season. I have a good understanding of where my program stands all year long because it's not a static thing, right? So I'm constantly looking, I'm always meeting with my GSOs, and we need to know where we are because it informs every conversation. So my primary data source is TMC data. It's beautiful. It has all the information that we need to run the RFP, and the supplier can see it. So it's lovely. But you have to be aware of your leakage. So if you have high leakage, and I'm working on programs right now, one of them started at 20% compliance. That was a bit tricky. So if you know you have leakage, you have to bring in secondary sources, and that is where it starts to get a little complex. My secondary sources tend to be if it's either corporate card or it's expense data, and that will depend on the tools that you have and what gives you the most, I don't know, fullness, richness of data. You know that they're going to need, your suppliers are going to need to know room nights, rate, average daily rate, etc. So you have to be able to have a source that can at least provide the basics there. What becomes tricky is you'll want to probably try and come up with what your total volume is. And you won't necessarily see that from one source. So you'll have to compare those sources. Consultants out there will have the tools to do it. And I recommend going that route. I have also tried to do it on my own. If you're good with data and you are a strong analyst, then certainly go for it. What I tend to do, though, if I am doing it on my own, is to look at that data and share what I have, always with open communication with the supplier, and kind of come to an agreement on where we believe that volume really is.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Catherine, you're up next.
So for us, we definitely do the same thing in terms of a data point. So we use our TMC data as a starting guide in terms of the number of hotel room nights, the average fees. Our organization encompasses about 85 locations across Canada, US, and Mexico. So there's a lot of hotels. There's a lot of chains. There's a lot of different RFPs that we do every year. We're really lucky in our team because we actually have access to a supply chain analyst that helps us with our data. But a big part of our RFP process is actually talking to our, I want to say top 10, top 15 locations that do a lot of hotel overnights. And we go to those locations and we speak to the general managers and operations managers to get an understanding of why they recommend the hotels that they do for those locations. Part of that is really understanding and you're connecting the qualitative data from them versus the quantitative and the data points. And that's really how we started conversations with our suppliers, our hotel suppliers. We deal with about 5 major hotel chains because we have locations in Niuka, Mississippi to Chicago, Illinois. So there's some places where there's only certain hotels available. And that's really the start, right? So TMC data is huge for us as well. We've developed reports into our TMC data that we get actually on a monthly basis that's automated, and that we can start looking at that. So we don't look at it on just an annual basis. We're continuously looking at it. And then we even, throughout the year, if we start seeing that there is more hotel nights in a specific location and that we are expecting it to go higher, then that's when we reach out to our hotel suppliers, and that's where the relationship really starts, right? And that's where that relationship builds, because if you understand what the goals are of these hotel suppliers and it aligns with your goals as an organization, then that relationship really does become it's fruitful, right? And it's working to make sure that your travelers are staying at the places that they want to stay, and that you're building on those relationships and those room nights with your hotels.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, now we get a buyer perspective on this. Monica, are you ready? We have a hardball question
so.
for you that everybody wants to know. Okay, so we know that there's some great data sources out there. On the hotel side, in your world, does it matter? Do you use that data to further negotiation? And I guess my second question is, with the goal of improving transparency between buyer and supplier, what kind of data would you like to see added, or do you think would be beneficial in helping our buyers and suppliers come together on a optimal rate?
Yes, so hotels love data. We need it, we want it, and we want it a lot. I believe that currently the data we receive does enhance and support the negotiation process. Buyer supply data allows the suppliers to determine their offering, to determine their top priorities, and accordingly determine the offering for the client. With that said, there is always room for improvement. In addition to the traditional matrix like company descriptions or production data in major markets, more nuanced data points could further improve the negotiation process. So, if I had a magic wand, here are a few examples that I think would be super helpful in the process. In terms of, I sort of bucket them in two buckets, budget related. So we love to see per diems. We love to see either spend estimates or budget estimates. And we would love to see more detail on per diems. I don't know if I already said per diems. Why do we want this data? This sets transparency from the get-go and saves everybody time, because we can determine between the buyer and supplier whether we are the right partner for each other. So that's very, very helpful for us. In terms of production, in my career, I was fortunate to support convention-sized hotels as well as boutique hotels in secondary markets. The primary market gets the data, but the secondary markets and the boutique hotels often lack the smart data, and it leaves the hotels out, and it sort of in a guessing game of how to structure the rates. The revenue models and the steps we take to determine the rates are the same from a little guy to the big guy. So it's very important for us to have that more nuanced insight. Few others that come in mind is we love to see travel patterns. We can offer more competitive rates if we know whether the client is traveling weekday versus weekends. And we love to see, what else do we have? Let me just take a look at it. Also, what's super helpful is knowing how many properties is the RFP going to and how many will actually will be allowed to get in. That sort of puts a fire under us as well to know how competitive we are. So that's about it.
Good job. Thanks, Monica. So a couple of key takeaways from what was shared just now. Firstly, ensuring you have a holistic view on data, both TMC and spend and card data, and making sure your go-to-market strategy for your RFP combines both data strategy as well as relationship strategy at a local level and a global level. Thank you, guys. That was great. We're going to move to the next question and keep this moving because I think we're running a little bit over, so we'll try and be as succinct as we can be here. Okay, so the next question, let's discuss our two favorite words, trust and transparency, and how we build on those two critical points in the negotiation process. So the question for the panel is, lack of transparency can erode trust during hotel negotiations and cause inherent friction. Considering the dynamic nature of business travel, what communication strategies can be used by both the buyer and the hotels to help demonstrate a commitment to transparency? So first question, I'm going to forward to Helen. Helen, when managing hotel negotiations at a global level, what does your communication process look like between properties? And how do you also ensure kind of full circle communication between your internal stakeholders and corporate buyers?
That's a loaded question, Chris.
And you have 3 minutes.
All right. The reason I say it's a loaded question is because we tend to forget how many people and how many stakeholders are actually involved in one single RFP. And so we are obviously going to ensure, as a global sales representative, we're going to ensure that our client success is going to be number one. But there are so many other people that are coming to the table. We've got a TMC that is also wanting to ensure that their client success in a very different way. We also have another layer. We have our corporate strategy. So we've got internal stakeholders that are establishing a corporate strategy for the year and for the RFP's vision of that year that we need to uphold and represent. And finally, we also have our hotels. Our hotels are our partners, and they have ownership companies that lead them and have their vision and have their, strategies for that year. So when you think about how many people are actually at that table when one single RFP comes in, it's mind-boggling. You really need to think about communication, trust, transparency. Everything has to be on the table. So yeah, data is important. Reporting is important, but it's also important to really understand what the actual end in mind and client success is going to look like. And, at the same time, we want to make sure that everybody's walking away feeling successful, kind of looking at the compromise. We need to look at the grander picture instead of having it hotel by hotel. Has the general entire RFP program been successful? That's really what we want to make sure about.
Great. Thanks, Helen. Sam, from a buyer perspective, and as it relates to the hotel negotiation process in general, do you feel that the level of communication between hotel supplier and buyers allows you to achieve and deliver against your perspectives and objectives?
I think it can. And that depends on the buyer and that depends on the supplier entirely. Buyers, you have to be proactive. And that's really what it comes down to. I'm sure that my supplier colleagues up here would say the same to the suppliers. You can't expect to go into an RFP and that's the first time you've talked to your hotels either. You have to develop relationships. And that, in developing that relationship, that is when you are going to really open up those lines of communication. And I'm not saying develop the relationship for all the soft benefits. I'm saying get to know each other. Make sure that your suppliers understand you, understand your program. Because really, that's how you can get into the strategy of it and start achieving those objectives. So, and then on the other side, the challenge, of course, is that travel buyers are very busy, right? They don't ignore your emails because they want to. They cannot they cannot reply to every hotel. So leverage your GSO, NSO, and I think that's advice for both sides of the table here. Please don't email directly. Please go through the GSO. The key here, like I was saying, is communication all year long, and making sure that you can tailor your interaction with that hotel chain based on the activity, obviously. If you do have, I'm kind of flip-flopping here, I'm sorry, but if you do have key properties, yes, maintain communication with those key properties, but really leverage those GSOs. The GSO will, through understanding your strategy, be able to advocate for you with the properties. Yes, they're also advocating on the side of the properties to you. There's no question, but really we want to make sure that you are able to have open conversations with them. They will bring you a perspective that you didn't think of, and I can promise you that just off the bat. So you will have opportunities by building these relationships that you wouldn't have otherwise had. The other thing is during the RFP, and I want to kind of be clear here, is during the RFP, we have technology, we need that technology, but it's process technology. This is not communication technology, and it doesn't help you build your relationship. So I'm talking about Lanyon and those types of, they are important. If you've ever tried to run an RFP on an Excel spreadsheet, which I just did, that's brutal. You want to try and get away from that as much as you can. But it is not going to develop that relationship for you, and you will end up in this loop of, asking for another discount and getting nothing back. You have to pick up the phone. You have to send an email. So,
Right.
yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Again, out of respect for everyone's time, I know we're running a little late. Catherine, I'm going to put your panel skills to the test here.
Okay.
Maybe in 2 or 3 quick bullet points. Throw us some suggestions or strategies that you'd recommend to help improve communication between buyer and supplier.
So one of our biggest thing is we actually have an internal site for our travelers. So if there's any new communications from our hotels, our airlines, car rentals, we post it there. We also do a little ping, a Teams ping for all of our travelers, just to let them know there's some new updates or new programs that they can take advantage of. The second thing I think that I would recommend is from a GSO versus a local supplier or a local hotel that's part of a bigger chain. Sometimes it doesn't work for us, and that's for our organization. Every organization is different, because sometimes those local relationships with that local, I'm gonna use IHG for example, that local Holiday Inn that's closest to our facility has a relationship built with that facility. You don't want to step over that relationship because that relationship took time to build. However, your global sales office representative that you work with at the corporate level, you want to let them know about that relationship. And I think that's really important. It's not that we want to take over that relationship, but that to ensure that that's part of it. And thirdly, it's just being open and honest. Let your suppliers know when there is, facilities closing or new facilities opening. If you know that there's going to be big projects coming up in the next year, because that helps with those RFPs. That will help build your program and within those organizations. Does that work?
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. All right. We're going to keep going here, guys. Again, out of respect for time, we are going to skip through question 3 and get right into question 4 because I think it's an important one, and I think we can spend some time talking through it. And the last question, really to the panel is make sure we're seeing the right slide here. Shifting the focus from short-term transactions to cultivating more strategic long-term partnerships is a key aspect to, obviously strategic relationship building. How do travel buyers and hotel sales managers cultivate partnerships that promote that long-term benefit rather than more immediate gain? So Sam, do you want to maybe take us through how you might define an ideal hotel partnership? And in your opinion, what does it take to really get to that long-term strategic partnership?
So it's about the what, the how, and the why. And when you know the answers to all those questions, you've made it. So what you need to achieve is usually fairly simple, right? And that's where your divergent objectives are. One side wants to save money, the other side wants more money. How you get there will really be determined on why there are friction points, right? So once you understand where or why those friction points are there, you can get into the how are we going to solve them. And so an example, if I can give you an example and it'll be quick. We had a property in my last job right beside our headquarters. We had had a relationship with that property for years and years and years. It was, our second home. 1 year during our RFP, the hotel came to us with a massive rate increase, and we didn't understand why. What happened here? And so there's your friction. Once we were able to talk to our GSO and get an understanding of what it is, we were actually lowering their ADR. And the owners weren't happy, and they either wanted us to really pay a lot more per room or fire us, and we couldn't have that. So we were able to get into solving that problem. So opening those communications up for sure, making data-based decisions, and looking holistically at your program. So the solution ended up being, well, let's take some overflow and put it into this new build over here, and we're keeping it within the holistic umbrella. So,
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Thank you, Sam. Next question for Helen. In order to achieve that level of partnership, as Sam mentioned, what accountability measures would you recommend from a hotel perspective to ensure all parties remain committed to that long-term success and strategy?
I think, Sam, your example was excellent because it really shows that long-term partnership. A GSO and a buyer, we're not talking about an RFP-based relationship. We're talking about a long-term relationship that starts way before the RFP and continues way after. So I think for a partnership to succeed, I'm going to build on what Sam said. It really is that trust, that transparency, that communication. But, it's having these transparent conversations about strategy, about vision, not necessarily about every single property and why, but what is the grander picture, I think is a very important conversation to have throughout the year. You want to understand what the company's vision is, and you want to kind of be nimble and adapt to it, if need be. So you're going to need to have transparent conversations on a quarterly basis, but you also want to kind of have a barometer. Make sure that you're setting expectations throughout the year that you're both kind of coming back to and circling back to ensure that you're both being held accountable. Because a partnership is reciprocal. You want to make sure that touch point throughout the year is there to ensure that the strategies are being met on both sides, I think is also very important.
Great. Thank you, Helen. I think we have 10 minutes left. You guys want to go through one more question? Yeah? Okay, so we'll backtrack here a little bit. Just to throw a curveball, we'll go to question 3 that we skipped over. So working together, and that's only because you guys did such a great job of covering that. Working together and developing a common pathway to help address individual needs and the objectives of both buyer and supplier is critical, obviously, to a successful negotiation and those long-term partnerships that we discussed. How can stakeholders, and by stakeholders I mean both buyer and supplier, how can we work together to define and prioritize shared objectives and really kind of build and create that mutual pathway forward? Because we've heard a lot today, right, about communication, transparency. Now it's about coming together, coming full circle. And so my question for Monica is, when you're negotiating from that position of diverging objectives, and if you see on the screen here, guys, I recommend you take a picture because this is great as you're getting into negotiations and really understanding what considerations need to be taken both from a buyer and supplier standpoint. I won't go through all of them, but the one common objective in looking at that is we're at total ends of the pole here, guys. There are diverging interests on the supplier and provider side that we need to close gap on. So my question, Monica, for you is, what are some best practices or examples to avoid that friction and really kind of find common ground?
All right, so maybe let's just take a look at a quick example of a diverging objective. So it is safe to say that buyers are seeking competitive rates and value-added services. Hoteliers, we want to maximize the rates, we want to optimize the occupancy, and maintain high service standards. So both sides have financial objectives on the opposite side of the seesaw. So what do we want to do in order to close that friction is to keep the seesaw balanced. And how do we do that? So one of the best practices is early engagement in the RFP process. That really allows both parties to understand each other, to ask questions, to stay communicative and close that gap and define the common grounds. Another one, remaining approachable throughout the process and communicative. So going back to the different layers and different stakeholders, just a quick example. I was working on a RFP recently where at first glance, the city that I was representing was not listed on the RFP. So that was a no-go. As a property level managers, I knew that the city that was desired is actually in the same county. They're only a few miles or kilometers away. And it took being committed and communicative with your global partners to communicate this to the global sales that, hey, we might have an opportunity. There's actually a limited number of hotels in the area, and it's in clients' best interest to add this on. The global partners would reach out to a client because it was an early engagement. There was enough time for the client to do due diligence, check facts, and ultimately we were able to make that RFP. So again, it all comes full circle.
Full circle. Great. Thank you, Monica. My question is for you, Catherine, from a buyer perspective. It's actually the same question. What experience or experiences do you have, and what would you recommend to close that gap?
I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about dynamic static pricing, which is a buyer's worst or actually a good tactic for negotiations. Market share is important from both the buyer and supplier side. So for us, if we're onboarding a new hotel supplier, we usually actually ask for a dynamic rate to see where the pickup is going to be, and we highlight certain hotels with our, I want to say, the biggest travelers, and we would ask them, for the rest of the hotels, let's do dynamic, but for these 3 locations, let's negotiate a set rate based on, minus the blackout dates, of course, depending on the cities, to see if we can get market share pickup. Because you never know, right? It might also be an option for your travelers that they never realized that that's an option for them to stay at. So it's also communications with your travelers and the different travel managers in your organization to make sure that you can promote those hotels. Market share is really important, I think, for our hotels, our suppliers specifically, because it shows that if they see growth in their market share, it shows that the partnership is working. And we need to, as buyers, let them know that it is improving, right? I think that's really important, and that's really a clear strategy that we use in terms of making sure that relationship is built up and forward so that it helps us with our negotiations when RFP season comes.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. That's great. So, folks, I've just put up on the screen some of the key learnings and outcomes for today's session. Obviously we talked about data-driven negotiations and the importance of having holistic data shared between both buyer and supplier. We've talked about strategies for clear communication and making sure that we're aligned on overarching objectives. And I think, you know, if you went across some of the sessions you may have attended over the last couple days, you'll see a commonality, and that is the importance of communication, transparency, and really coming together and working together both between buyer and supplier. And it's no different in navigating this crazy new world of travel and hotel negotiations. It's probably never more so important than it is today. And lastly, strategic relationship building. I think we heard that from the panel today. No longer can we just rely on static data to negotiate. There's a really great talk that was posted to LinkedIn over the last day or two, interestingly from a buyer in the US who made note that no longer do buyers have a divine right to the lowest available rate in the system. And it is up to corporate buyers now to really kind of reinvent the pathway forward and maximize savings back to their organization. And that pathway starts with being strategic, having holistic data, working with your suppliers to be open and transparent, understanding mutual objectives. And I think we covered a lot of that today. I've just put up a resource slide as well. Feel free to take a picture of this. Alternatively, this will be made available to everyone on the GBTA Canada website, where you'll be able to access the hyperlinks and some of the resources we've used for today. Also, at the onset of today's session, I'd encourage everybody to go into your app. There is a process where you'll need to log on to the events app, tap on the schedules tab, locate your session on the schedule, and please feel free to rate your survey and how you thought today's session went. We certainly appreciate any feedback that we can get. Great. And before I close out and I send everyone back to the expo floor, just a real general comment. You know, within the corporate travel community, when faced with challenges and adversities, we've always found our way back to one of our most important and essential traits. And that's the ability to work together through partnership and collaboration to achieve great things. We hope that the information today that we've shared has been useful and will help you guys as you navigate that pathway forward. And we thank everybody for your time. I know we ran over a little bit, but we are certainly appreciative, and please enjoy the rest of the conference. Okay, great. So thank you, everyone. We do have 2 minutes for questions, either of myself or the panel. So if you guys are cool hanging out, we are too. So maybe if I can borrow a microphone, I will ask the floor. Are there any questions from the group? Anyone with questions? No? Okay, Tim Riley's got a question. This will be a good one. I know Tim, and Tim's always got great questions.
I'm on the TMC site, and so since you're informing us, hey Sam, nice to see you again. The question for me is, you talk about NLRA and LRA, and the new customers don't understand that NLRA is just a target price. And as they push out your PDFs or the information in their PDFs to their travelers, there's some blowback that we usually get because we can't get that rate. And just some comments on what does it take then to reassess that? How many bookings do you need over how much time before you would go to a point whereby a customer would say, I need to be at a certain volume to get an LRA rate?
I hate NLRA. I'm just going to put it out there. I
Okay,
tend
good, we're all agreed then.
Yeah. No, I tend to decline them.
Yeah.
I do. I want a price, and I want it to be available. That's part of what I'm negotiating for. So I will accept NLRA on non-strategic properties, maybe a new property coming in, something I'm trying out. If it is a key location where we need coverage, absolutely. No, I don't accept NLRA.
Usually we don't get an NLRA if it's already a strategic hotel, right?
Usually not.
Yeah,
No, that's
so
true. That's
usually
true.
this would be a new property that a hotel would like for us to try out as an option for a new market share in that city.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump in, and we need to have a little bit of GSO blood coming in here. I understand that, you know, non-LRA is divisive, but we also have to look at it as a tool. You're not looking, it's not a punishment, it's not a reason because you haven't reached a certain threshold. It really is a tool, and remember I was saying that we've got corporate visions, but we also have hotel and hotel ownership strategies. And availability is gold right now. You know, we often say that rate is number one. I'm going to go ahead and say that availability now has to be number one. And so, you know, it's not just about that one account. And LRA is a value added, and it comes with a higher rate because there is enormous amount of value to it. So usually you'll have a non-LRA, but there'll be an LRA rate behind that with a higher rate. And that really is the value that comes with it.
And I like that better.
Okay.
I like to pay a little bit more and have that guaranteed rate.
Yeah, and I think that that's what's important. It can't just be about the lowest rate possible. We're not punishing anybody. It has to be, and it has to be reciprocal. It has to have. There will be a threshold that hotel will feel that an LRA rate will be appropriate.
So a lot of chatter within the room, which tells me that this is obviously a good topic. And you know, guys, I'm gonna call everyone back to something we shared a little earlier in the presentation. These are diverging interests, and nobody is wrong. What we're seeing here in this example, which I think is perfect, are a need and a strategy, and they will never come together. We'll never be able to achieve mutual objectives and deliverables if there's not an open level of communication between both supplier and hotelier. The truth is, going back to the same LinkedIn talk that I mentioned earlier, they noted hotels are willing to go with less occupancy, but higher ADR, higher average rates, more revenue, than fill a property just because they want to get a certain customer or brand name in there. That's a marked difference, guys, than what we may be used to previously. So it requires a different mindset, a different go-to-market approach, and an investment in understanding each other's objectives and finding commonality. So great question, Tim. Thank you for that, and thank you both for sharing a really relevant example. Are we good for time, or are we going to break? We're going to break. Thank you again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the expo.